Commander Jake Morrison stood in the massive hall of the Galactic Council. The building was huge, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Crystal walls reached up so high they seemed to touch the stars themselves. 12 different alien species sat around a giant table that glowed with soft blue light. Jake felt small among these creatures. Some were twice his height. Others had skin that looked like metal. A few didn't even have solid bodies at all. They were all looking at the hologram floating above the center of the table. The hologram showed a human warship. It was sleek and silver with weapons that could destroy planets. But that wasn't what made the aliens stare. The name on the side of the ship read U.S. Rubber Duck. In bold letters, Ambassador Zektar from the Vorthan Empire made a clicking sound with his mouth. Parts. His species looked like giant insects with 4 arms and skin that changed colors. Right now his skin was bright yellow, which meant he found something very funny. Rubber duck? He said through his translator device.
What?
The small machine made his alien words sound like normal English. Humans named their most powerful warship after a toy for children's baths. The sound that came from his throat was clearly laughter, even though it sounded like metal scraping against stone. Other aliens around the table began making their own versions of laughter. Some rumbled like earthquakes. Others made high-pitched whistles. A few just glowed brighter with different colors. General Thox of the Krillian Empire was 8 feet tall and covered in thick gray scales. His people were known as the best warriors in the galaxy. When he laughed, it sounded like rocks falling down a mountain. I have seen humans do strange things before, he said in his deep voice. But this is beyond strange. What kind of war strategy involves naming your ship after bath toys? Jake kept his face calm, but inside he was getting angry. He had fought in 3 different wars. He had seen good friends die in space battles. Rubber Duck wasn't just some joke to him. It was home to 5,000 human crew members who were ready to die for their species. Dr. Lisa Park stood next to Jake. She was the human ambassador to the Galactic Council. She had short black hair and wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. Lisa had been in politics for 20 years. She knew how to keep her temper when aliens said stupid things. The name has special meaning to our people, Lisa said in a calm voice. But the aliens weren't listening anymore. They were too busy laughing at humans. The Ethereal Collective's representative didn't have a real body. It was just energy held inside a crystal container that floated 3 feet off the ground. When it laughed, the crystal glowed bright purple and made a sound like wind chimes. Perhaps the humans think comedy will make their enemies too confused to fight back, it said. More laughter filled the hall. Jake felt his hands form into fists. These aliens thought they were so smart. They had faster ships and bigger guns than humans. Their technology was hundreds of years ahead of Earth's. But they didn't understand humans at all. Captain Alex Stone was on the bridge of the Rubber Duck, which floated in space just outside the council station. He could hear the alien laughter through the communication system. His crew was listening too. None of them looked happy. Captain, said Lieutenant Ben Carter from the communications station. Ben was young, maybe 25 years old. Joined the Space Navy right out of college. Should I turn off the audio feed from the council meeting? Alex shook his head. Let the crew hear this, he said. They need to know what we're dealing with. The bridge of the Rubber Duck looked nothing like the fancy council hall. Everything was made of simple gray metal. The lights were bright white, not soft and pretty like alien technology. Computer screens showed green numbers and letters. It looked like something humans had built, which it was, but looks could be fooling. The Rubber Duck had weapons that could crack moons in half. Shields could stop attacks that would destroy entire cities. The ship's computer could think faster than any human brain. It just didn't look as fancy as alien ships. Back in the council hall, the laughter was finally stopping. Ambassador Zektar wiped something that might have been tears from his large black eyes. Forgive us, Commander Morrison, he said, but his skin was still yellow with amusement. It is just that your species continues to surprise us with your unusual choices. Jake stepped forward. The ship's name doesn't affect how well it fights, he said. Of course not, said General Thox, but his voice suggested he didn't really believe that. I'm sure your rubber duck is very dangerous. The way he said rubber duck made it sound like a joke. Jake wanted to tell him about the ship's real capabilities. He wanted to explain why humans chose names that seemed silly to others, but that information was classified. The aliens couldn't know about human military secrets. Instead, Jake just nodded. The ship will serve in the Joint Defense Fleet as planned. Excellent, said Counselor Prime Nexus, who spoke for all 12 species. The counselor was the only alien who hadn't laughed. Species looked like tall, thin humans, but with silver skin and no hair. The Terran Federation's contribution to our combined forces is appreciated. But Jake could tell that the counselor didn't really appreciate anything. These aliens saw humans as junior partners in their galactic community. Earth had only joined the Council 50 years ago. Most of these species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. Dr. Lisa Park activated her datapad and began reading from the official report. The UES Rubber Duck carries a crew of 5,000 humans as plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and defensive shields rated for Class 7 energy attacks. The ship is 2.3 kilometers long and can travel at warp factor 8. Very impressive numbers, said Ambassador Zektar, but his skin was still slightly yellow. I am sure the rubber duck will be a valuable addition to our fleet. Jake knew that. None of these aliens took the ship seriously. They saw the name and decided it must be weak. They didn't understand that humans often gave funny names to their most dangerous weapons. During World War II, humans had called their biggest bombs Fat Man and Little Boy. Those names sounded harmless, but the bombs had ended a war. The meeting continued for another hour. The aliens discussed patrol schedules and supply routes. They talked about new sensor networks and communication protocols. Through it all, they kept making small jokes about the rubber duck. Not loud enough to be insulting, but loud enough for Jake to hear. When the meeting finally ended, Jake and Lisa walked back toward their shuttle. The corridors of the council station were wide enough for the biggest alien species to move around comfortably. That meant they were huge by human standards. They don't respect us, Jake said when they were alone. I know, Lisa replied, but respect has to be earned. We're still the newest members of the council. Give it time. Time might be something we don't have, Jake said. He was thinking about the intelligence reports that had been coming in from the outer rim of the galaxy. Strange ships had been spotted near the edge of known space. Ships that didn't match any known alien design, but Jake couldn't tell Lisa about those reports. She didn't have the security clearance to know about potential threats. Only military commanders like Jake knew that something dangerous might be coming. As they boarded their shuttle, Jake looked back at the council station. Somewhere in that massive structure, 12 alien species were probably still making jokes about human ship names. They thought they knew everything about warfare and strategy. Soon, Jake thought, they might learn that humans had their own ideas about how to fight wars. And those ideas might be very different from what anyone expected. 3 weeks after the meeting at the Galactic Council, Lieutenant Ben Carter was working the night shift on the Rubber Duck's bridge. The ship was patrolling the outer edge of known space, where the stars were thin and the darkness seemed to go on forever. Ben liked the quiet hours when most of the crew was sleeping. He could focus on his work without interruptions. His job was to monitor all the communication signals that came from across the galaxy. Most of the time it was just routine messages between merchant ships and space stations. But tonight was different. The first signal came at 0347 hours, ship time. Ben almost missed it because it was so faint. His computer showed a tiny blip on the long-range sensors, far beyond the edge of the galaxy. Ben frowned and checked his equipment. The sensors were working fine. He increased the power to the detection array and tried again. This time the signal was stronger. Something big was out there, moving through the empty space between galaxies. Something that shouldn't exist, Ben called. Captain Alex Stone to the bridge. Alex arrived 5 minutes later, still putting on his uniform jacket. His hair was messy from sleep, but his eyes were alert. Show me what you found, Alex said. Ben pointed to his screen. Long-range sensors. Picked up movement about 50,000 light-years past the galactic rim. The energy readings are unlike anything in our database. Alex studied the display. The signal was getting stronger, which meant whatever was out there was getting closer. Could it be a natural phenomenon? Maybe a rogue star or a black hole? No. Sir, Ben said, the movement is too regular, too purposeful. This is artificial. Alex felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He had been expecting something like this ever since the classified briefings back on Earth. Intelligence reports had suggested that something was stirring in the void between galaxies, something that might not be friendly. Wake up the senior staff, Alex ordered. Full alert status, and send a priority message to Fleet Command. Within an hour, the rubber duck was no longer alone. Ships from all 12 species of the Galactic Council were converging on their position. The massive Vorthon dreadnought Eternal Glory arrived. First, followed by 3 Krillian battle cruisers, Admiral Kate Rodriguez commanded the joint fleet from her flagship, the UES Washington. She was a tough woman who had earned her rank through 30 years of service. Kate had fought pirates and rebels, but she had never faced anything like this. The alien fleet commanders held an emergency meeting through video link ambassador. Zekdar appeared on screen from his ship, his skin now a nervous green color instead of its usual blue. Our scientists are analyzing the sensor data, Zekdar said. The energy signatures are completely unknown. Whatever approaches us uses technology we have never seen. General Thox's image showed him on the bridge of his flagship. The big Krillian looked worried, which was unusual for his warrior species. My people have legends about things that live in the void between galaxies. We always thought they were. Just stories? Legends? Kate asked. The Devourers, Thox said quietly. Beings that consume entire civilizations and add their technology to their own. But these are old tales. No one has seen evidence of such creatures for 10,000 years. Dr. Lisa Park was also on the video call from the diplomatic ship New Geneva. She had been researching similar legends from Earth's history. Human mythology speaks of beings that come from the darkness beyond the stars. We called them different names in different cultures, but the stories are remarkably similar. Before anyone could respond, Lieutenant Ben Carter's voice cut through the discussion. Admiral, we have multiple contacts approaching fast. They're coming out of hyperspace. The view screen showed empty space for a moment.
Ow.
Then reality seemed to twist and bend. Dark shapes emerged from nothing, as if the universe itself was tearing open to let them through. The ships that appeared were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They looked like they were made of liquid metal that constantly shifted and changed shape. Some were as small as fighters. Others were larger than entire space stations. This is Admiral Rodriguez to all ships, Kate said over the fleet communication system. Maintain defensive positions. Do not fire unless fired upon. The alien ships moved in ways that seemed impossible. They flowed through space like water, bending and twisting without any visible propulsion systems. As they moved, they seemed to absorb light itself, making the stars around them appear dimmer. Then they spoke. The voice came over every communication channel at once. It was not translated by any machine. Instead, it spoke directly into the minds of every living being in the fleet. The words were cold and empty, like the void between galaxies. We are the Void Hunters. We have consumed 1,000 galaxies. Your technology will be added to our own. Your species will serve us or be destroyed. You have 1 hour to surrender. The communication ended as suddenly as it had begun. The fleet commanders looked at each other through their video screens, all of them stunned by what they had just heard. Did that thing just speak directly into our minds? Jake Morrison asked from the Rubber Ducks Bridge. It appears so, said Dr. Lisa Park. The technology required for telepathic communication across multiple species is beyond our understanding. General Thox was the first to recover. We do not surrender to anyone, he growled. Krillian warriors have never backed down from a fight. Neither have the Vorthon, added Ambassador Zekdar, his skin now bright red with anger. Admiral Kate Rodriguez made the decision for all of them. This is Rodriguez to all ships. Battle stations, we defend this galaxy. The first attack came. Without warning, one of the Void Hunter's ships simply pointed itself at the Vorthon dreadnought. Eternal Glory. A beam of pure darkness shot out and struck the massive warship. The Eternal Glory's shields flared and held for exactly 3 seconds. Then, the beam cut through the energy barriers like they were made of paper. The hull of the dreadnought began to dissolve, its metal plates turning to dust and floating away into space. "Turn fire," General Thox ordered his battlecruisers. The Krillian ships opened up with their most powerful weapons. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids fired at maximum power. Quantum torpedoes that could crack planets streaked toward the enemy. The weapons struck the void, hunter ships, and did absolutely nothing. The enemy vessels absorbed the energy attacks and seemed to grow stronger. Their liquid metal hulls rippled and changed, adapting to each new weapon that hit them. "They're learning," Dr. Lisa Park said with horror in her voice. "Every time we attack, they adapt to our weapons." The battle was over in minutes. The Eternal Glory was completely destroyed, its crew of 10,000 Vorthon warriors lost. 2 Krillian battlecruisers were torn apart by weapons that seemed to bend space itself. A dozen smaller ships from various species were either destroyed or captured. The Void Hunters didn't pursue the survivors. They just stopped attacking and waited as if they were studying the remaining ships. "This is impossible," General Thox said. His voice was shaking. "No enemy has ever defeated Krillian ships so easily. They're not just defeating us," Jake Morrison said grimly. "They're learning from us. Every weapon we use, every tactic we try, they counter it and add it to their own capabilities." Admiral Kate Rodriguez stared at the tactical display. Half of her fleet was gone, and the enemy hadn't even seemed to try very hard. All ships fall back to defensive positions. "We need to figure out how to fight these things." But as the surviving ships retreated, everyone was thinking the same thing. How do you fight an enemy that learns from every attack? How do you defeat something that gets stronger every time you hit it? The Void Hunters had given them 1 hour to surrender. Now, with most of their fleet destroyed, that surrender was starting to look like the only option for survival. Captain Alex Stone stood on the bridge of the Rubber Duck, watching the enemy ships in the distance. They were still changing shape, still adapting. But there was something different about human thinking that these creatures might not understand. The question was whether humanity could figure out how to use that difference before it was too late. Captain Alex Stone received the encrypted message at 0600 hours, exactly 12 hours after the first battle with the Void Hunters. The message came directly from Earth Command, bypassing all normal military channels. Alex had to use his personal command codes just to open it. The message was short, but carried the weight of humanity's survival. "Operation Yellowfellow is authorized. Execute Protocol Chaos 7. Good luck, Captain." Alex stared at the words on his screen. He had hoped he would never receive this particular order. Operation Yellowfellow was so classified that only 50 humans in the entire galaxy knew it existed. It was a strategy so strange that even other humans thought it was crazy. Dr. Lisa Park was working in her quarters aboard the diplomatic ship New Geneva when her secure communication system activated. The woman who appeared on her screen was Director Sarah Williams, head of Earth's Department of Psychological Warfare. "Lisa, we're implementing the Chaos Protocols," Sarah said without any greeting. "You know what that means?" Lisa felt her stomach drop. She had helped develop the Chaos Protocols during her early years in military intelligence. They were based on a simple idea that most humans found disturbing. Sometimes the best way to win a war was to stop fighting like you wanted to win. "You sure about this?" Lisa asked. "If it doesn't work, we'll look like complete fools to every alien species in the galaxy. If it doesn't work, there won't be any alien species left in the galaxy," Sarah replied. "The Void Hunters are heading toward the core systems. They'll reach the populated worlds in 3 days. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Rubber Duck, Lieutenant Ben Carter was receiving the strangest orders of his military career. Captain Alex Stone handed him a datapad containing new communication protocols. "Sir, these orders don't make any sense," Ben said, reading through the list. "You want me to broadcast children's songs on all military frequencies?" "That's correct, Lieutenant," Alex said. "Starting with Old MacDonald Had a Farm and continuing through the entire Earth Children's Music Archive." Ben looked at his captain, like the man had lost his mind. "Sir, the alien fleet commanders will think we've had some kind of mental breakdown." "That's the idea," Alex said with a grim smile. Across the human fleet, similar conversations were taking place. The UES Paperclip received orders to transmit cooking recipes on the emergency military channel. The UES Banana Hammock was told to broadcast nature documentaries about Earth's silliest animals. The UES Flying Toaster got instructions to send out comedy routines from human entertainment archives. Commander Jake Morrison was aboard the command ship, UES Washington, with Admiral Kate Rodriguez when the orders came through. Kate read the message 3 times before she believed what she was seeing. "Jake, please tell me this is some kind of code," Kate said. "Please tell me that broadcast random nonsense on all frequencies actually means something sensible in military terms." "It means exactly what it says, Admiral," Jake replied. "We're going to confuse the enemy by acting completely illogical." "That's not a strategy," Kate said. "That's insanity." "Sometimes they're the same thing," Jake answered. The alien fleet commanders were still trying to figure out how to fight the Void Hunters when the human transmissions began. Ambassador Zektar was the first to notice something was wrong. "Commander Morrison," Zektar said over the communication link, "your ships appear to be broadcasting children's entertainment. Is this some kind of technical malfunction?" "No malfunction," Jake replied calmly. "We're implementing a new tactical protocol." General Thox's deep voice rumbled with confusion. "I do not understand. How does singing about farm animals help us fight the enemy?" "You'll see," was all Jake would say. The Void Hunters had been studying the survivors of the first battle, analyzing their ship designs and weapon systems. Their liquid metal hulls were constantly shifting, preparing counters for every possible human and alien tactic. But then something strange happened. The enemy ships began to slow down. Their constant shape-changing became erratic, like they were having trouble processing information. Dr. Lisa Park monitored the situation from her ship's science station. She watched as the Void Hunter vessels started to flicker their solid forms. "Becoming unstable? It's working," she whispered to herself. "They can't adapt to something that has no logical pattern." The Void Hunters had evolved to counter rational military thinking. Their technology was designed to analyze enemy tactics and develop appropriate responses. But human children's songs had no tactical purpose. Cooking recipes contained no military intelligence. Comedy routines followed no strategic logic. For the first time in their existence, the Void Hunters encountered something their advanced minds couldn't understand or counter. Captain Alex Stone watched his tactical display as the enemy formation began to break apart. The Void Hunter ships were moving in random directions, as if they were confused about what they were supposed to be doing. "Lieutenant Carter," Alex said, "increase the nonsense broadcasts to maximum power." "Of those old Earth comedy shows to the mix?" "Aye, sir," Ben replied, though he still looked like he thought everyone had gone crazy. "Should I include the really old ones? The ones with the silly sound effects?" "Especially those ones," Alex said. The effect on the Void Hunters was immediate and dramatic. Their ships began to twist into impossible shapes as their adaptive systems tried to process the meaningless human transmissions. Some of the enemy vessels started spinning in circles. Others began to move backward for no apparent reason. Admiral Kate Rodriguez watched in amazement as the most feared force in the galaxy began to act like they were having technical difficulties. "Jake, what exactly are we doing to them?" "We're giving them information that has no meaning," Jake explained. "Their whole strategy is based on learning from their enemies." "But you can't learn from something that doesn't make sense." The alien fleet commanders were still confused about human tactics, but they could see the results. Ambassador Zektar's skin had changed from nervous green to hopeful blue. "The enemy ships appear to be malfunctioning," he reported. "They are no longer maintaining formation or responding to our movements." General Thox was less diplomatic. "Do not care if humans have lost their minds, as long as it stops these creatures from destroying us." But the humans weren't finished. Dr. Lisa Park activated the next phase of the Chaos Protocols. Every human ship in the fleet began broadcasting different types of nonsense simultaneously. Art appreciation lectures mixed with stand-up comedy. Cooking shows played alongside children's cartoons. Sports commentary blended with nature documentaries about penguins. The Void Hunters' adaptive technology couldn't handle the overload. Their ships began to physically break apart as their systems tried to make sense of information that had no sense to make. My God, whispered Admiral Kate Rodriguez. We're destroying them with pure chaos. Lieutenant Ben Carter looked up from his communications station with wonder in his eyes. Captain, the enemy ships are starting to tear themselves apart. Their hulls are forming geometric shapes that shouldn't be physically possible. Alex nodded grimly. That's what happens when perfect logic meets perfect illogic. The universe doesn't know how to handle the contradiction. Across the fleet, human crew members watched in fascination as their absurd broadcasts caused the Void Hunter ships to fold in on themselves. The liquid metal hulls that had seemed invincible were now twisted into sculptures that hurt to look at. The enemy vessels that had survived the first wave of chaos broadcasts were now trying to retreat, but they couldn't figure out which direction to go. Their navigation systems were stuck in loops, trying to plot courses away from threats that made no logical sense. This is impossible, said Dr. Lisa Park over the communication link. We're winning a space battle by broadcasting cooking shows. And children's music? Welcome to human warfare, Jake Morrison replied. We've been confusing our enemies for thousands of years. It's just that no one ever tried to use it on aliens before. The tide of battle had turned completely. The Void Hunters, who had seemed unstoppable just hours before, were now helpless against an attack they couldn't understand or counter. But the real test was still to come. The human strategy had worked against these advanced scouts, but more. Void Hunter ships were coming from the darkness between galaxies, and those ships might have learned from what happened to their scouts. The question was whether humanity could maintain their chaotic advantage, or if the enemy would find a way to adapt to even the most senseless human behavior. The Void Hunter ships were dying in the strangest way anyone had ever seen. Their liquid metal hulls twisted into shapes that shouldn't exist in normal space. Some vessels had turned themselves inside out. Others had formed perfect geometric patterns that made no sense for a spaceship. Captain Alex Stone watched the destruction from the bridge of the rubber duck. His crew was still broadcasting the most ridiculous content from Earth's entertainment archives. Right now, they were transmitting a cooking show about how to make birthday cakes, mixed with a nature program about dancing penguins. Sir, said Lieutenant Ben Carter, the enemy ships are starting to create. I don't even know what to call them. They're making structures that hurt to look at. Alex studied his tactical display. The Void Hunter vessels were folding space around themselves, creating areas where the normal laws of physics didn't seem to work. Some ships had become flat like paper. Others had stretched themselves into long, thin lines that went on for miles. Their adaptive systems are trying so hard too. Understand our broadcasts that they're breaking reality itself, Alex said. Keep transmitting. At some of those old comedy shows with the laugh tracks. The effect was immediate. The remaining Void Hunter ships began to pulse with strange colors that didn't exist in any normal spectrum. Their hulls started to make sounds. In the vacuum of space, which should have been impossible, Admiral Kate Rodriguez was watching everything from her command ship. She had fought in dozens of battles during her career, but nothing had prepared her for this. The most advanced alien technology in the galaxy was being destroyed by human television shows. Jake, she said to Commander Morrison, I need you to explain to me how this is working. How are we destroying these things with cooking recipes? Jake pointed to the tactical display where enemy ships were twisting themselves into impossible knots. The Void Hunters evolved to be perfect adaptive predators. Their entire civilization is based on analyzing threats and developing counters. But we're not threatening them in any logical way, so they can't figure out how to respond. Worse than that, Jake said. They're trying so hard to find patterns in our chaos that their own systems are breaking down. It's like asking a computer to divide by zero. The question doesn't make sense, so the computer crashes. Dr. Lisa Park was documenting everything from her science station. As a xenopsychologist, she understood better than anyone what was happening to the enemy. Their minds work like incredibly advanced computers, she explained over the communication link. But computers can only process logical information. When you feed them pure chaos, they get stuck in endless loops, trying to find meaning where none exists. The alien fleet commanders were still struggling to understand human tactics. Ambassador Zektar had been monitoring the strange broadcasts for the past hour. His skin kept changing colors as his emotional state shifted between confusion and amazement. Commander Morrison, Zektar said, "Your people are transmitting a program about humans hitting small white balls with metal sticks. How does this destroy enemy warships?" "Golf," Jake replied. "It's a game we play for fun. The Void Hunters are trying to figure out the military purpose of golf tactics." General Thox rumbled with what might have been laughter. "There is no military purpose to hitting balls with sticks?" "Not at all," Jake confirmed. "That's why it's working." The largest Void Hunter ship, which was icily the size of a small moon, had been trying to adapt to human chaos for over an hour. Its surface was covered with strange growths that looked like metal trees growing backwards into the ship's hull. Parts of it were spinning in different directions while other sections moved through what appeared to be solid matter. "Captain Alex," Stone decided it was time to finish the job. "Lieutenant Carter, activate Squeaky." Ben looked up in surprise. "Are you sure?" "Squeaky is still experimental." "Perfect," Alex said. "Experimental and illogical. Just what we need." Squeaky was the rubber duck's artificial intelligence system. Unlike normal ship computers, Squeaky had been programmed with every database of human humor, creativity, and absurdity that Earth had ever compiled. The AI's personality was based on a combination of children's cartoon characters, stand-up comedians, and artists who specialized in making things that made no sense. When Squeaky came online, the first thing it did was start singing a song about purple elephants riding bicycles through fields of electric cheese. The song was broadcast on every frequency the ship could produce, including some frequencies that shouldn't have been possible to create. The effect on the Void Hunters was catastrophic. The giant enemy ship began to fold in on itself like origami, made of liquid metal. Its surface rippled with patterns that seemed to move in directions that didn't exist. Parts of the ship started to phase in and out of reality, as if it couldn't decide whether it wanted to exist or not. "What is happening to them?" asked Admiral Rodriguez. Dr. Lisa Park was frantically taking readings with every sensor she had. "Their reality manipulation technology is turning against itself. They can't process Squeaky's output because it follows dream logic instead of real logic." "Dream logic?" Kate asked. "The kind of reasoning that makes sense when you're asleep, but sounds crazy when you're awake," Lisa explained. "Squeaky is basically dreaming out loud, and the Void Hunters are trying to understand the dream." The other enemy ships were having similar problems. One vessel had turned itself into what appeared to be a giant flower made of metal and energy. Another had split into dozens of smaller copies of itself, all trying to fly in different directions at the same time, but the strangest thing was happening to the ship that had tried to adapt to the golf broadcast. It had grown what looked like a massive metal golf club from its hull and was trying to hit nearby asteroids. Every time it swung the club, reality bent around the impact point, creating ripples in space itself. "Sir," said Lieutenant Ben Carter, "I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from all enemy vessels. Their power systems are overloading." "Good," Alex replied. "Keep Squeaky singing. Add some of those children's nursery rhymes about impossible things." Squeaky began a cheerful song about a cow that jumped over the moon while wearing roller skates and playing a violin. The AI sang in perfect harmony with itself, creating musical chords that shouldn't have been mathematically possible. The Void Hunter ships began to scream. It was a sound that came through space itself, bypassing the normal rules about sound, needing air to travel. The scream was the sound of perfect logic, trying to understand perfect chaos, and failing so completely that reality itself started to break down. One by one, the enemy vessels began to collapse into themselves. Their liquid metal hulls formed spirals that twisted into dimensions that hurt to think about. Some ships simply faded away like they had never existed. Others exploded into patterns of light that spelled out words in languages that no one had ever spoken. The largest ship, the one the size of a small moon, made one final attempt to understand what was happening to it. Its surface began displaying images from the human broadcasts it had been trying to analyze. Cooking shows mixed with nature documentaries, children's cartoons, blended with sports commentary. Comedy routines overlapped with art appreciation lectures, but instead of making sense of the chaos, the ship began to broadcast its own interpretation of human entertainment. It started transmitting what appeared to be a cooking show about how to prepare planets for dinner, hosted by a creature that looked like a geometric shape, trying to be funny. "It's trying to imitate our chaos," Dr. Lisa Park said with wonder in her voice. "But it can only create logical chaos, which isn't chaotic at all." The attempt to copy human illogic was the final straw for the Void Hunter's systems. The massive ship folded in on itself with a sound like reality tearing apart. When the light faded, there was nothing left but empty space and a few strange energy readings that made no sense to any sensor in the galaxy. The battle was over. The Void Hunters, who had consumed 1,000 galaxies, had been defeated by cooking, shows, children's songs, and an AI that dreamed about purple elephants. But even as the Allied fleet celebrated their impossible victory, everyone knew that this was just the beginning. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, more Void Hunter ships were watching and learning from what had happened to their scouts. The question was whether humanity's chaos could work a second time, or if the enemy would find a way to adapt even to pure madness. 1 week after the battle, the Galactic Council met again in their great crystal hall. But this time, everything was different. The same aliens who had laughed at the rubber duck's name now sat in respectful silence as Commander Jake Morrison presented his official report. The hall was packed with representatives from all 12 species, plus dozens of military observers and scientists who wanted to understand what had happened. The holographic display showed footage from the battle. But even seeing it again, many aliens still couldn't believe what they had witnessed. The enemy force consisted of 47 Void Hunter vessels, Jake said in his calm, professional voice. All were destroyed using what we now call cognitive warfare techniques. No conventional weapons were fired during the engagement. Ambassador Zektar raised one of his 4 arms. His skin was a deep blue color that showed respect and humility. "For our earlier dismissal of human methods, we failed to understand that your greatest strength lies not in your technology, but in your ability to think in ways that break the rules of thinking itself." Jake nodded politely. "Apology accepted, Ambassador. You understand that our methods seem strange to logical minds." General Thok stood up from his seat. "I have fought battles across half the galaxy," he said in his deep voice. "I have studied every form of warfare known to civilized beings. But never have I seen an enemy destroyed by broadcasting entertainment programs." "It wasn't the programs themselves that won the battle," Dr. Lisa Park explained from her seat at the human delegation table. "It was the complete absence of logical, military purpose. The Void Hunters had evolved to counter rational tactical thinking. When faced with pure irrationality, their adaptive systems couldn't function. The ethereal collective's representative pulsed with curious colors. You deliberately acted without reason to confuse creatures that depend on reason?" "Exactly," Jake replied. "Sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem is to stop trying to solve it logically." Captain Alex Stone was also present at the meeting. He had been invited to explain the technical aspects of the human strategy. "Our ship computers were programmed with databases of human creativity, humor, and absurdity. When we broadcast that information, we created a tactical environment that no rational intelligence could navigate." The alien delegates asked hundreds of questions over the next several hours. They wanted to understand every detail of how humans had turned chaos into a weapon. But Jake could see that many of them still struggled with the basic concept. "How do you train soldiers to act without logic?" asked the representative from the Nexus Confederation. "You don't train them not to use logic," Jake explained. "You train them to recognize when logic isn't the right tool for the job. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years in our art, our entertainment, and our everyday creativity." Admiral Kate Rodriguez spoke next. She had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now she stood to address the assembly. "The Galactic Council needs to understand something important. This wasn't just a lucky accident. Human chaos is a deliberate military capability that we've been developing for decades." They were beginning to realize that humanity had been preparing for unconventional warfare long before they joined the galactic community. Are you saying that humans have other strategies like this? General Thox asked. Many, Kate replied. We've spent our entire history fighting enemies who were stronger, faster, or better equipped than we were. We learned to win by being unpredictable. Dr. Lisa Park activated a holographic display that showed human military history. On our home world, we had a saying, if you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough. But we don't think of creative tactics as cheating. We think of them as survival. The display showed examples from human wars throughout history. Soldiers who had defeated superior enemies by using unexpected tactics. Generals who had won battles by doing exactly what their opponents thought was impossible. Your species has been preparing for this kind of warfare for your entire existence, said Ambassador Zektar, his skin now glowing with admiration. You didn't just develop chaos tactics. You evolved them as part of your nature. That's right, Jake said. Every human child learns to think creatively before they learn to think logically. Every human adult knows how to be silly, how to play, how to make things that serve no practical purpose except to bring joy. The meeting continued for 2 more days. By the end, the Galactic Council had voted unanimously to establish the Interspecies Tactical Innovation Center. With Dr. Lisa Park as its first director, the center would study human creative warfare and find ways to integrate it with alien military precision. But the most important change was in how the other species viewed humanity. The same aliens who had mocked the rubber duck's name now requested to serve alongside human ships. They wanted to learn from the species that could win battles by broadcasting cooking shows. 3 months later, Captain Alex Stone stood on the bridge of the rubber duck as it patrolled the outer rim of the galaxy, known space. Other species sent their young officers to serve aboard human vessels just to learn how humans thought about problems. Lieutenant Ben Carter was still the communications officer. Instead of just monitoring normal space traffic, he spent his time developing new forms of chaos communication. His latest project involved transmitting poetry that rhymed in impossible ways, Captain Ben said. We're receiving a message from the new Vorthan ship. They want to know if we can teach them how to broadcast human comedy shows? Alex smiled. Tell them we'll send over our entire collection of old Earth sitcoms. But warn them that their crews might start acting silly after exposure to human humor. Already on it, sir, Ben replied. I've prepared a safety briefing about the side effects of extended exposure to human entertainment. Dr. Lisa Park's Tactical Innovation Center had become the most popular assignment in the entire galactic fleet. Military officers from all 12 species competed for the chance to study human methods. They learned about creative problem-solving, unconventional thinking, the military applications of pure silliness. The center's first major success came when they encountered a group of space pirates who had been terrorizing merchant ships for years. Instead of fighting them with conventional weapons, the joint human-alien task force defeated the pirates by challenging them to a dance contest. The pirates were so confused by the unexpected challenge that they forgot to fight back. By the time they recovered, they had been surrounded and captured by ships that were still playing music from the dance competition. General Thox personally requested to serve alongside human forces after that incident. Turn entertainment into warfare, he said. My people have been warriors for 10,000 years, but we never thought to confuse our enemies with dancing. The rubber duck itself had become a symbol of humanity's place in the galactic community. Its name was no longer a source of mockery, but of respect. Other species began naming their own ships after seemingly silly things, hoping to capture some of humanity's unpredictable nature. Commander. Jake Morrison was promoted to Admiral and given command of the new Creative Warfare Division. His job was to develop even stranger tactics for future conflicts. His first project involved training dolphins to serve as military advisors, since their thinking patterns were even more chaotic than human ones. But perhaps the most important change was philosophical. The galaxy had learned that there was more than one way to solve problems. Logic and reason were powerful tools, but sometimes the best solution came from thinking in ways that made no logical sense at all. The void. Hitters never returned to their galaxy. Intelligence reports suggested that news of their defeat had spread throughout the dark spaces between galaxies. Other predatory species had decided that any galaxy protected by creatures who could weaponize children's songs was too dangerous to attack, and so humanity found its place among the stars, not as the strongest or the smartest species, but as the most beautifully unpredictable. They had proven that sometimes the greatest victory came not from being the best at playing the game, but from changing the rules of the game entirely. The aliens had indeed laughed at the human warship's name, sound of their own understanding breaking apart against the magnificent chaos of human imagination.